I recently read a great autobiography, and it's connected to the intro of this podcast. Maya Angelou. I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. Great autobiography. I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou. Forward by Oprah Winfrey, coincidentally. Gotcha, bitch. Dave Chappelle. Oprah, she writes this beautiful introduction to this classic landmark book in, I guess you can call it, Black experience in the United States. You know, Maya Angelou. And in the introduction of this podcast, I did a rendition of her poem, Caged Bird. Now, in searching out that poem that I wanted to do for the podcast, a recital, I came upon, okay, she also has an autobiography. Her first. She has a series of them, right? As, time goes on, there's more to be said. So the first in the series of her autobiographies is I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. Read it. And man, I can't recommend it enough. I can't recommend it enough as just an enjoyment in reading. It's entertaining. It's insightful, it's wise, it's humorous, it's gut-wrenching, heartbreaking, and it really packs a wallop. It really does. I started off by being, I read the introduction that Oprah wrote, a beautiful foreword that Oprah wrote, how, when she was growing up, she was looking to see herself reflected in the societal narrative. And she wasn't hearing or seeing any of the stories that kind of spoke to her as a young woman. And, she reads this book, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou. And coincidentally, she has an opportunity as a young journalist to interview Maya Angelou. And they became lifelong friends up until Maya Angelou's death, I believe in 2014, unfortunately. She passed away. She lived a long, successful life. And, I read the foreword by Oprah, got into the book, and, at first I was kind of like, all right, this is, it's nicely written. There's a command, there's a flow, that's very understated about writing. If you have any experience writing, like I write my jokes, I have some humble writings myself, and it's so glaring when, well, that's how people become professional writers. There's a certain flow that sometimes it's just about, you can just feel it when you're reading it. It just comes through the page, it comes through the words. So, she had a flow, definitely. And I was like, okay, this is nice. Oh, wow, this is kind of insightful. Oh, wow, this is kind of informative and kind of heartbreaking. And, oh, wow, this is kind of humorous. Oh, wow, this is kind of edgy and interesting and entertaining. And, wow, like, I'm actually now, like, I'm looking forward to, like, every time you'd read a chapter or two, the next day, you're looking forward to read some more. What's the next bit? What's the next story? What's the next progression in this autobiography? And it just drew me in, and it unfolded in a way that I truly did not expect. Because, I'm a man in 2020, and I'm a Black man. And, I believe in accountability and self-reliance. And I also believe in an understanding of underlying factors systemic racism, prejudice. I'm aware of these factors, but I'm also very much in the belief of self-reliance, community organization, accountability, family. And I was a little skeptical going into it. I'm like, I don't really know. I don't know what to think. Like, I'm pretty, I'm pretty cynical in my worldview, the belief that people are motivated by self-interest. I'm cynical in my worldview, but I'm like a humanitarian in my heart. So I wasn't really sure what's this book gonna mean to me. It's a part of literary history, Black culture history, the English language history. She's a famous writer and a poet. I didn't really know what to expect. And like I said, it just unfolded in a beautiful way. It flowed lovely. It was a celebration of childhood, a celebration of the loss of innocence, a celebration in the overcoming of racial barriers, a celebration in personal accountability and realization, humor, family dynamics, And for me as a man, it was a palatable insight into women's issues. I had a great respect and interest in her perspective as she told some of her stories coming up as a young woman in Arkansas, I believe. She moved around, Arkansas, San Francisco, California. And, it just really unfolded in a beautiful way. I have a couple quotes, excerpts that I'd like to share with y'all now. This one is on, I found very, very, very insightful. Let me read for you here. This is from I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. Little snippet. I find it interesting that the meanest life, the poorest existence, is attributed to God's will, but as human beings become more affluent, as their living standard and style begins to ascend the material scale, God descends the scale of responsibility at a commensurate speed. That was very meaningful to me, because there's not many examples in the book where she speaks her opinion directly to the reader. She's mainly just telling a story, but she never really comments on the story that frequently in the book. And, here she is making this very wise observation about God and human life, it's interesting that the more affluent our living standard and style ascends, God descends the scale of responsibility at a commensurate speed. We get away from God once we start becoming full of ourselves and, God being the God of your choosing, folks. I personally believe in God. I believe in a higher power. I believe in a creator. I see the beauty in his or her design, the human body, for example. The involuntary, voluntary function, right? We don't volunteer to breathe. Our body just automatically knows how to do that. That's life. That's the spark of life in motion that science can't answer. There's a belief in science. They call it scientism. The belief that everything can be explained by science and anything that can't be explained by science is not worth thinking about. A scientific approach. But for all the science and knowledge we as human beings have come up with, which is great and impressive, technology, here I am on camera on the internet. This is technology. This is a masterpiece of human invention. But for all our science and know-how, how do we explain a heartbeat? How do we explain breath? How do we explain the inner workings of the body that we don't volunteer for? It's involuntary. I'm just breathing, involuntary. You know? My heart is pumping blood through my body. My organs are functioning. That's the spark of life that I don't volunteer, but I am given. That we are given. How do you explain that? And I found that, very insightful in the book, that little quote. There's also this really great passage where Maya Angelou, she speaks on her youth. The whole book's about her youth. It's an autobiography on youth. But there's a passage where, she's of a teenage time. She's in her teenage years. And she's applying to be a conductress, conductorette, or a motorette, as they call it. She wanted to work on the San Francisco street trolley. And, she wanted to be a coin operator. This is like mid-40s. So she goes down to the office to apply. And there's a white receptionist, a white lady. She says, "Hi, I'm here to apply for the job. I want to be a conductorette for the San Francisco trolley." And the white lady looks all befuddled, like, well, our hiring manager is absent at the moment. I don't know if the job is really available anymore. And Then Maya's like, "Well, I'm answering the ad in the paper. There's an ad in the paper that I'm answering. I mean, the job's still available, isn't it?" "Well, I don't know. Well, why don't you come back?" "Okay, sure, I'll come back. When should I come back?" Oh, heavens. Well, why don't you come back to see the manager at this time? Okay, I'll come back later. Thank you. "Oh, okay, thank you, miss." And she leaves. And then the passage goes on to say how in that moment, the idea of black and white, racial tension, racial games, she just saw through it all. She felt so sad that as a black woman and as a black woman and as a white woman, they were both forced into playing this little game that was based on hate, prejudice, disrespect from the people that came before her, the people that came before them, that had nothing to do with the present moment. They were both victims of the racial prejudices of, one color holding down another color, one color resentful of the other color for their past indiscretions and, their past transgressions. They were all kind of a victim of the same hypocrisy and petty, ugly, twisted human nature. That was the point she was making. They were both victims. And that insight where it's like, basically, you can't hate one and love the other. So the hater and the hated are both victims of the higher hypocrisy. And it's a game that a lot of people are forced into playing. They call it white privilege. And a lot of times it's like a situation that they're forced into. born into the legacy of whatever. You know? It's an overall ugly thing for both parties. Sorry, I dropped my hanky. I had to pick it up. But like, you know, it's that lineage of just, you know, victimhood on both ends. And, you know, even in the 1960s, I believe. Is this when this book was first published? Yeah, like, when was this book published? 1969, copyright 1969, you know? In the height of this, in the midst of the civil rights movements, Maya Angelou had the insight to see that. You know, it's a victimhood on both ends. Past transgressions carried down, hatred carried down. You know? And it benefits both cultures to work together and to celebrate one another. You know? There ain't no answer in hate. You know? If you hate, you can't love. How can you hate one and love the other? You know, if I hate you for your color, your gender, your sexuality, if I hate you for an arbitrary reason like that, then I hate everybody. How can you look somebody in the face and hate them for no reason, then turn around and love your family and love your kids and love your friends? You don't love anybody. You're clouded with hate. If you hate one, you hate them all. And it's a all-encompassing hatred and victimhood that we all have to take our part in, our accountability in, and transcend. And that was like the insight of this book. You know, I know why the caged bird sings. And the adolescent, you know, the uncertainty and awkwardness of adolescence. And what a great book. And it was on par for me. It was on par for me with like other writers that have touched me in that way, like Charles Bukowski. Coincidentally, they're both from the California area. You know, I believe they're both from San Francisco at different points of their life. You know, I believe Charles Bukowski was raised in San Francisco. I think he was born in Germany, raised in San Francisco. And, you know, Maya Angelou, I forget where she was born, in the South, in Arkansas, but she was raised in Arkansas, raised in California. And they have a very similar kind of vibe because they're both poets. Charles Bukowski, renowned drunk, alcoholic, you know, post office, factotum, barfly, you know, all his poems, you know, he's very similar in that he wrote poems and then he also wrote autobiographies, you know, as I mentioned there, post office, factotum, Hollywood, barfly. These are autobiographies that he wrote, much in the style of Maya Angelou, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, and various others, and her poems. Like, I remember as a young man, I had my feelings of rebellion, my feelings of disenfranchisement, my alcoholism. I had a lot of these things going on, and I really connected with Charles Bukowski. I really felt him on, like, in his writing. My favorite being like, my two favorite being Post Office and Ham on Rye. You know, Ham on Rye had a very similar feel to I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. It's that exploration of humanity and just the beauty in how it unfolded in both cases, Charles Bukowski and Maya Angelou. And that's what I mean. I was really taken back because it's like, Hey, when the soul speaks to you, the soul speaks to you. It doesn't matter in what color and what language. Well, maybe it matters in language. If you can't understand what the fuck you're reading, it might be a problem. But the heart understands what the heart understands. You know what I mean? And you can be moved, whether it be some German American bar hopping, burnt out alcoholic degenerate like Charles Bukowski, underneath all of which, a shining soul. But you could be this degenerate like Charles Bukowski, or you could be this very insecure, questing black woman like Maya Angelou. And then the heart wants what the heart wants when it's unfolded, when you hear the truth in their words. So, I definitely recommend to anybody Maya Angelou, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. Powerful stuff.